Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A bunch of lively group here. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time. How's the session going so far?
Good.
Good. Getting a lot of good information?
Yes.
Awesome. I saw over like 1,900 people signed up, so that's a great turnout. My name is Nasser Azimi. I'm a senior partner in a local company called Teranomic. We do predominantly software development in Microsoft and other environments related to Microsoft. We also have a set of products that essentially predominantly focus on solving government technology type problems, having to do with case management, grants management, as well as data integration type solutions. We have an extensive professional services group in Sacramento. About 90% of our projects are focused on state and local government. Recently, we had an opportunity to team up with a great company called Pure Storage. I have with me Harris Hall, who I will introduce shortly in great detail. Pure Storage is basically an all-flash storage company, and they are up and coming very quickly, and they are one of the perfect solutions in the context of this topic that we're going to cover today, which is VDI and Mobility. So in that context, I mentioned Sacramento-based company. We've been around since 2009, focused on predominantly state and local government, and we are a platinum reseller of Pure Storage. So if any of you want Pure Storage, you gotta go through me. Just kidding. Before we get into the depth of our presentation, we do have some gifts to give away. So first question is, what does VDI stand for? Very good. Here you go. Just kidding. Well, actually, I'll give you a t-shirt or my fine. Thank you. Actually, you know what? I only got 3 questions. I get a t-shirt this as well. All right, second question is, what is VDI? So we know what it stands for. You can't answer any more questions, by the way. But participation, yes, sir.
Well, now we have it set up. We're on a third line. So or for our coworkers, they can use it to go in and have access.
Good. That's a good explanation. Any other explanations for VDI? Going once, going twice, gone. Okay.
Want some help?
What's that?
You want some help? I could toss it to people.
So the third question is, you kind of referred to it, I'm not sure how many of you heard. It's a good thing. So what problems are solved by VDI? Yes, sir.
So the process that it solves, it can reuse old equipment, and it's easier to manage and control and push images or software.
Good. You hit some of the high points of what problems VDI solves. Any other ones from, let's say a business standpoint in terms of, give you a clue in terms of remote access. You can't answer anymore, buddy. Anybody else? No, let him answer if nobody else comes forward. Okay, we'll take your response, which is good. All right, I think this kind of ends our contest. You know, VDI is a great solution. Sorry about that. In the context of remote access to your apps and systems. So in that context, it essentially will solve telecommuting issues that government and private organizations are faced with to enable access to their respective systems from anywhere and anytime. So, but Harris has a great deal to share with us in the context of the business problems that are solved, as well as the technology aspects that he'll introduce to us. Very quickly, Harris is one of the strategic visionaries with Pure Storage. He leads the Strategic Alliance and Business Development Group, and he was previously with VMware. As you can see on the slide here, Harris has great accomplishments in the context of driving revenue and corporate growth, and has had the opportunity to work with Fortune 100 companies. And now we have a chance to hopefully utilize his capabilities within state of California government. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Harris.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nasser. Hey guys, thank you. I try to get off this slide as quickly as possible because it's a little bit embarrassing. So, geez, actually, I've done all that stuff. I'm just an old guy working for a great company. Yeah. So thanks very much for taking an hour out of the afternoon. I hope it's valuable to you. Objective-wise, I'm hoping you get a sense for how flash storage and a major change that's going on in the world of IT technology, I think, is really enabling a new class of applications for virtual desktop infrastructure. And so, if anything, when you leave today, I'm hoping you get a sense for that flash, how it works, how flash arrays work, which are very different than our classic spinning disk, mechanical disk arrays, and how it might enable a new set of applications as we see, not the classic VDI, but the next generation of virtual desktop infrastructures. Just a bit about our company. We've been in business, been selling for about 3 years now. Have a wide number of customers. Frankly, many of them are in state and local government. Probably our biggest segment, if you look across our segments, are state and local governments, and not necessarily large ones either. We'll see some examples in some of the presentation stuff I have today of mid-sized cities, groups that basically have one person managing the servers, storage, and the virtual desktop infrastructure. But Gartner just came out, and I thought it'd be useful to share this. In August, late August, they came out with this assessment that they had been doing over the course of about a year, analyzing this kind of new emerging market of all flash arrays. So the segment is basically storage devices that are on a storage area network, consolidated, and using block-based storage on different, the different protocols that are out there, like Fiber Channel or iSCSI. So we came out in this, Gartner puts out a magic quadrant where they try to kind of throw all the folks in that segment on a single graph. And you can see that we are kind of up and to the right, which is generally where you want to be as a leader. And certainly out there with respect to function. We're only a company of about 700 folks right now, but we're up against, and our capability to execute, which is kind of the y-axis on this. We're right up there with some of the very much larger companies like an EMC or an IBM. So very, very happy with that. And then moreover, what Gartner does is after they kind of do the overall matrix, then they go and they do a double click on the capabilities of that specific device or that specific product for different types of workloads. So the ones that we're very proud of across the three that are kind of relevant to, I think, this audience, certainly OLTP, just general like database transaction processing, we're number one. Server virtualization, number one obviously, and then VDI as well. So we are making it's really exciting to see us working in these VDI infrastructures. So very quickly, I think Nasser did a good job of kind of kicking off the whole VDI. What is it and why people want to do it. But classically, it's been that by centralizing the desktops in a single place in the IT data center, we're able to get a more reliable, more secure, and more manageable environment for the folks out there. Additionally, and now as we come into the next generation of VDI, people are really wanting to make sure that they both make sense economically and that they're more powerful and compliant, so that we can always make sure that those endpoints are in compliance with regulations that we might have, either internal or governmental regulations. So very powerful business case and use case. I use VMware View up here, but really our array and most arrays in this kind of SAN setup will work on basically any type of virtual desktop infrastructure from Microsoft or Citrix or VMware. certainly everybody says the year of VDI is here, and I think the reality is that the VDI just keeps building and building and building in terms of its investment, and certainly state and local governments are on the forefront of investing and realizing the value and the economics around virtual desktop infrastructures. But there's a problem with that, and if some of you have experienced, how many of you have tried to roll out a VDI deployment at your site? Anyone? Okay, great. So interested in insights you guys might have on this, but a lot of times the bottlenecks for a virtual desktop deployment will becomes the storage. And it's not so much that it's compute bound, it's actually often storage bound. And today's disks, mechanical disks, even if they're arrayed into a number of different, spinning, disk units, still have to deal with latency and power issues. A lot of times with VDI deployments, you've got a very variable demand, bursty workload demand, where you might, at the beginning of the day, everybody wants to log on and get their system going. There's, could be hundreds, maybe thousands of virtual desktops wanting to spin up, and everybody wants their stuff right away. So there's that delay. That's not great when you have mechanical disk. Basically, you're worried about disk latencies to get that data off your piece of disk, and everybody's trying to get their data off off a different piece of the disk. That's very difficult. It's also a random I/O pattern. That's true of any sort of desktop infrastructure, whether it's a virtual desktop infrastructure or even like a normal server virtualization infrastructure. When you start combining all the I/O requests from virtual machines that are residing on top of, say, vSphere or Hyper-V, the requests that actually get pushed down to the storage are a very kind of unpredictable random I/O pattern. So that is not great for spinning disk, where when you can't predict where that next request is going to come from, oftentimes you get hit by rotational latencies of the disk. You have to wait for the disk to spin to the right point or have that head move to the right position on the disk head. A lot of times they're very much a write workload, and this isn't always the case, but a lot of times they can be very much a write workload with a little bit of reading, although like on boot ups it's going to be more of a read workload. And as I say, they can be unpredictable. But even with the challenges, the cool thing about VDI, where it's kind of gone where it's been and where it's going, traditionally VDI, like the first generation, was trying to kind of automate the task worker, right? Trying to do like kind of dumb terminal automation or have very simple desktops that were, I'd call them non-persistent. People would basically come in, they do their work, everything would be managed from a central point, and at the end of the day, those desktops would be essentially destroyed. Nowadays, we're moving to where VDI is able to develop and manage persistent desktops, where all your data and your applications and all your personalization kind of lives with your VDI session, and it can persist. So that's called persistent desktops, as well as more use cases like rich graphics. So we're working with groups like NVIDIA to be able to push out things like CAD designs or construction documents across a wide area network, which before wasn't possible. And then certainly, and this is obviously really relevant for the mobility conference, where in the past it was that we're trying to automate desktops, simple laptops or desktop machines, and that was kind of what we were trying to create a VDI environment for. Today, there's all sorts of clients that we need to have plugged into. And really, as IT professionals, we want to get out of the business of having to enable, some guy's new device onto the network. We want to rely on, VMware or Hyper-V or whoever the virtual desktop infrastructure is to enable that, so it's nice and just snaps in. So there's a broad set of systems that are coming into that, and it's not simply Windows environments anymore. Now we're looking on our phones to be able to get access to data, like say like a box.net type of thing, where we're all sharing, file share and sync type applications, as well as SaaS-based applications. So all this stuff needs to be incorporated and is being enabled into the new VDI kind of 2.0, if you will, environments. The challenges, though, become, you came with this very simple use case. You kind of had very simple desktops. The state, we call them link clones or stateless desktops, could be destroyed at the end of the day. And the focus was, how cheap can I get it? To now there's a set of of issues around that all have to do with essentially this being if you're going to have the people's environment and data and applications all stored centrally, it's essentially become a tier 1 workload. And so it needs to be reliable, it has to scale, be performance, and it has to be secure, in addition to the stuff that we had on VDI 1.0. So really the new thing that's going on in the world of storage is really the evolution of all flash arrays, and they're becoming affordable enough that they are at the price or lower than a disk unit. So when the company was founded, a bunch of the folks are basically software guys. The guy that developed storage foundations at Veritas was one of our founders, and he wanted to make a device that was extremely simple to use. Not a lot of knobs and widgets. Most of the stuff was built in, but had tremendous power. So all flash arrays have plenty of IOPS, input-output per second operations, to deliver to VDI applications that can really manage the spikes in demand for workloads. So it smooths out some of the boot storms you'll get in the morning, or the stuff you'll do with security when you have to do a virus scan, and all of a sudden everybody wants to do a virus scan at the same time. It flattens that out so everybody gets a very consistent, predictable, usable performance. The affordability is really kind of an interesting thing, and this is where I think it's, again, a takeaway for you at the end of the day is if you buy, say, a 10 terabyte array, and it's typically a mechanical disk array, you get 10 terabytes, but then you have to put RAID striping for HA, high availability, and you have to sub-allocate that array. Probably by the time you buy your 10 terabyte array, you're going to be going and looking at maybe like 7 terabytes usable. So it's always going to be less than the amount you buy. With Flash, it's actually the opposite. So what Flash does, and other folks in our segment do this as well, but we're kind of as I say, the leaders in this technology, is when the blocks come in, we're doing deduplication on those in line. So as the blocks come in and they're being asked to be persisted to the solid state fabric, we're looking and see if there's one already stored. If it is, we don't write it again. We just create another pointer, a metadata pointer to it. And so it's a very fast operation to do duplication, and then we do a bunch of data reduction algorithms there as well to try to compress it as much as possible. So on VDI workloads, where often they're very similar types of desktops, we get very high compression ratios. So let's just say on the low end, typically a VDI deployment we'll find is 5x reduction. You buy your 10 terabyte array, basically you're going to have around 50 terabytes of usable. Versus, when you buy a mechanical disk, you're going to get less than terabytes. So you really need to look and see the difference between the flash arrays is going to be you're going to be getting more usable than you have raw. Versus traditional disk, you're going to get less usable than you have raw. Does that make sense? Okay. Scale and reliability. So for us, this is something that a lot of our customers love, because they can start out with small desktop deployments where they typically on a VDI system they'll want to try 100, 200, a few hundred type of desktops before they scale it throughout the organization. Well, they can do that and they can use the same array. They don't have to buy additional storage. If anything, maybe they have to buy another shelf in the existing array, but we can move all the way from hundreds to thousands of VDI users in a single unit. And then we've designed it such that it's, again, a tier 1 type of array, so it's all non-disruptive operations. So if you want to upgrade, you want to swap out and put a more powerful controller in, you want to even pull out some of the SSDs, we keep on running non-disruptively. So there's no shutdown of the array for upgrade operations, expansion operations. And then finally, like I say, the simplest administration, it's basically, in the case of vSphere, or in case of VMware, it's managed all within vSphere. It's a plug-in in the vCenter API. You just hit a cross tab and you can see all the administrations to do data allocation, monitoring, all that kind of stuff. And it's made to be that way. It's really targeted at having somebody who knows their virtual infrastructure, being able to manage it, configure it, and operate it. So, we're talking a little bit about the performance events. So we kind of did a graph here of various events that happen in VDI. This is, again, some of the challenge that happens when in VDIs where we get a boot storm in the morning where everybody's trying to fire up their desktop or log in. You know, basically the light blue line here is what we're able to deliver in this kind of environment. Basically, we have enough capacity in the box at SSD speeds to flatten out these spikes. So we don't have these long delay times when demand spikes. Okay, whether it's virus scanning or patching and recomposing at night, all these kind of things, even though there might be write patterns, they're all flattened out. One example that we have, like I say, we have a bunch of state and local governments. So City of Davenport wanted a very high performant, resilient system for their emergency service vehicles as well as their police. And they needed something they could rely on. Their existing system was running out of space. It basically had problems when they would mix the workloads. So they wanted to put database workloads and application workloads on there combined with their VDI workloads, which in general, you know, if you're using mechanical disk, it's a challenge to do that because you want to make sure you have enough headroom in that mechanical disk to meet any peak demand. So what they did is when they were able to move to a pure storage array, they found that they were able to get a 6-to-1 data reduction, and basically they can just run everything on it. They started out just running VDI just to test it out, and we told them, hey, put something else on it. So they put something else, and now they basically are running 20 different applications, including pretty heavy-duty ones like SQL Server and Exchange, as well as all the VDI desktops. So it's a really good for mixed load use case. And then this is just an example of the speeds when compared to top mechanical disks. Just the speeds of SSD are just much faster, particularly on very common operations that you would do in administration. So a lot of the things that happen when you think about how you're going to set up your VDI deployment often is based on what's the least amount of stress I'm going to put on my storage, because people with mechanical disk, you're worried about those peak workloads. A lot of times they have to separate or be very careful about choosing their linked, whether they use a persistent or a non-persistent desktop. With a pure storage device, you don't have to worry about that because you always have enough horsepower. We basically use the same amount of dedupe and data reduction regardless of whether it's a persistent or a non-persistent desktop. It's basically the same, they both perform equally as well. As I said, we can commingle the workloads, which generally isn't something that people would do in the mechanical disk world. And then it's very simple to install. In fact, this is the thing that I love to go to and install, because when people are used to an array, landing on their doorstep, it often comes with a services guy, or at least you have to have a very savvy storage guy set it up, configure it, and it's often multiple hours, if not days, to get that thing up and running. Our array generally installs within an hour, physical cable racking it. And then, often the second hour of RSE or whoever's out there, maybe it's folk from Teranomic, are basically showing you how to operate the console from the GUI and that kind of stuff. So it's a very different type of model in terms of simplicity, and that's the way we designed it. We designed it to basically be the Apple model of, we got a lot of stuff baked in. There aren't a lot of knobs. The RAID and all the parity and HA stuff is built in. You don't have to worry about it. So there's no LUNs, RAID, worldwide namings to worry about. Basically, most people just define one big LUN, one big logical unit name, and just map all the VMs to that. And this is an example where, if any of you have done VDI deployments, a lot of times complex ones, particularly, large scale ones, you've got to worry about the performance of the disk that you're talking about. You often tier it. You also got to associate the workloads with different RAID levels for high availability. There's a lot of things to compare. So basically, this is an example of an actual VDI reference architecture for one of the major competitors. But again, that is all nothing you have to worry about. The RAID is baked in. There's no reason to go through all this complexity to basically get the performance you need on a solid state array. The management, as I said, it's within the web GUI of vCenter. So that's the management console for almost all the back ends. Even if you're running Citrix on the front end, you're running a vSphere on the back end, usually. And it's basically just a cross-tab in vCenter. Okay, so plugs into the client. Basically, you can create your data stores, and you just basically load it and go. As I say, just define the LUN and map it to the data stores within VMware. You have complete capacity visibility, so you can see you see part of this, and actually you can see it on our website much better. But you can actually see what the data reduction is at that point in time for your workload. So if it's 6 to 1 or 10.5 to 1, whatever the workload reduction, there's a level on the right, and they give you kind of two figures. One's without thin provisioning, and one's with thin provisioning. Well, obviously, the thin provisioning is going to be a lot higher, but we think that's kind of cheating, the thin provisioning. So we usually just give our numbers just without thin provisioning. It's a raw, how much compression or how much data reduction we're getting through dedupe and our reduction algorithms. And then for performance, we also have latency, IOPS. Those are the graphs that you see on the right there. And we can do that on a per data store basis. So you can look at it either for the whole array, how it's operating, or you can click on, you can see on the left there, click on the specific data store that's associated with your VDI deployment or your vSphere deployment, and it will show you exactly what's going on with your system. And we're basically an elite partner within VMware. We have all the certifications. We're demoing, if you've heard of something called vVols, which will be the kind of next generation of storage for VMware. We're a part of that, where actually the VMs can define their own storage characteristics. That'll be coming out next year. Oops, what did I do? So here's another case where we're looking at MDECA, and this is a K through 12 group that was supporting 80,000 students across 94 school districts. I know some of you have heard of these guys. I had actually heard about these before I joined Pure. But now they're basically the management tasks that used to take a long time, just because the mere management of, say, delivering 4 terabyte drives, 2 of those to a host, took 45 minutes before, literally on the order of seconds. And then data reduction benefits, whereas the disk, it's going to take whatever the disk allocated, it's going to be, that's kind of the baseline. We were able to reduce that by 5 because the VDI workload is very compressible, very reducible. I think we talked about this, but basically we allow our customers, if they like, to plug into our into a proactive support we call Cloud Assist. And so you can go if you go on our website, you'll see a ticker of everybody that's plugged into Cloud Assist, averaging out what's the current dedupe level that we're getting out of all the arrays out in the field. Almost all of our customers use that. We use that for proactive monitoring and support. But we also get characteristics like to be able to measure our availability very exactly. So I think we're like in the 4 nines right now, really close to the 5 nines. But as I mentioned, oh, is that right? Okay.
5 9 7 is the last.
So there's like, so 10 minutes of downtime, right? Yeah. Mind-boggling when you get past 4, I guess, for me. So all of this, the objective of the array and the way it's designed is that you can do upgrades, add additional capacity, add new controllers, swap out controllers, and it's designed to always deliver, not only not go down or not have to be offline, but it's to deliver the same performance even when that is occurring. So no performance loss as you're doing software upgrades, capacity expansion, hardware replacement. We've designed it such that it's always delivering the response time that you'd need. So and this is the stuff we have in it. A lot of detail there to talk about what how we've done it, and the stuff that's all built in. But the net is that the parity, the RAID, all the stuff that normally you'd have to set up on your own as an administrator if you were to buy a mechanical array is already baked into a Pure array. And that's, again, just trying to make it simple for folks to use and deploy, but have all the things that you'd need to keep it highly available and performant. All the desktops folks are often worried about encryption. And so all of our stuff is auto-encrypted on the SSD. So if, say, somebody gets the smart idea of ripping out a shelf or an SSD drive out of the unit, it's already encrypted with 256-bit AES encryption on it. so that's not going to help them too much. And then really the VDI deployments, what's really what's exciting about VDI deployments is we have we're able to accelerate a lot of POCs, because I think people are able to prove that the array does work to what they need it to do more quickly. And so we basically allow folks to take one of our arrays, probably the one that they might want to buy, to try it in a POC or an eval for 30 days, and a customer can return it for whatever reason. You don't like the color on the bezel or the shape of the array, just return it, no questions asked. For 30 days, you can just try it out, because we have a very good win rate when people just check these arrays out and how they work in their environment. And plus now, again, with Flash, it's a little different in the sense that your workload will vary. I mean, there's some kind of baselines. With VDI, we almost always see at least 5x improvement. But a lot of customers we have are seeing anywhere from 15 to 20 to 25. We have deployments that are getting 25 to 1 data reduction. So it really depends on what kind of system they're running. The ROI is not only just the purchase price, right? Because the purchase price is going to be roughly about the same as mechanical disk, but it's also the return on investment to be able to put a bunch of different workloads on a single array. So there's some value there, as well as what's the total cost of operations for running a system like this. So we're finding that the value, it's comparable to mechanical disk on the front end for your CapEx expenditure, but then on an operating level, it's pretty much, that makes the case for it, because it's so much simpler to use, easy, and expand, that it really is a superior solution. And then the final thing is there's one of the things that the founders want to do is not repeat kind of the nasty business practices that are often in the industry today, where there's this interesting effect where if you get a 3-year maintenance contract on your storage device, that 4th year where you're out of kind of service and you've got to get a new renewal, that 4th year is pretty pricey. And often it's the cost of it just happens to be about the cost of a new array from vendor X. So we said we didn't want to do that. We don't have to do forklift upgrades or force people to have to buy a new array if they didn't need one. We believe that these arrays are, 7 to 10 years is what the manufacturers are giving us, and we believe with the smarts that we're putting into our software to make sure we spread out our data, we believe we can get even more years out of those arrays. We basically have a program called Forever Flash, which basically allows you, if you're on our maintenance contract at the end of 3 years, we'll upgrade and give you new controllers at no extra charge, and we'll just set your maintenance charge whatever the prevailing, whatever the current support fee is. So you're not going to get jacked up on your 4th year maintenance, or that, but you'll end up with nice new controllers, and you'll end up with a current, whatever the current existing support pricing is. So it's trying to form a more of a relationship-based approach versus a extortion type approach on your maintenance. Finally, I think we have another use case, and I think if you all are interested in this and you want to find something that kind of matches up, we have a lot of very, very happy state and local references and case studies, and these are among them that I've shown you today, but we've got a boatload more. This is a case where people want to bring their own laptops, right? The college was, it had their own laptops. It was having to re-provision them every semester, every year. And there was licensing and cost administration burden of guys running around having to keep these workstations all in play. And then licensing challenges as the students would put their own stuff on there. And the university was responsible for something that might be out of compliance because a student downloaded something that wasn't licensed, let's say. So they basically got out of that by moving to a VDI, BYOD type of infrastructure. And then they went to persistent desktops, so everybody had their own desktop. They could use essentially any device, which they loved, right? So they could use they didn't have to have a certain desktop that was approved. They could basically bring a tablet or a cell phone or a laptop. And they were able to get 8-to-1 data reduction, and they experienced pretty much sub-millisecond latency is what we're all about. So we'll say if you're not getting sub-millisecond latency, that's there's a problem out there. But so we are delivering very high, fast performance to all these devices. Okay, I think we talked about that. But often the cost of VDI can often be up to 50% of your entire purchasing costs. And so what we're looking to do is reduce that. And basically with the way you're able to scale an array, a solid state array from Pure, you're able to get a much lower price per desktop. So you're enabling and getting through the compression and data reduction we're seeing well under 100. Oftentimes it's more like 10 to 40, depending on how many VDI units are on that. And then additional savings through, as I mentioned, through the consolidation of having multiple workloads. You don't have to have islands of storage that are basically sized out at the worst case capacity for each storage unit. Here you can stick them all together and have them all running well together. Case in point was, existing ARCare is a large data provider for medical units. And actually, we have this is a joint case study with VMware we did, and actually VMware published it. And it's basically they're running multiple applications on a single mechanical disk array and having a lot of problems. They basically could not keep the system up. Systems were going offline. They were timing out. And so when they moved to a Pure Storage array, basically they were eliminated, and they were able to put all those applications and have them work fine together. And again, a lot of times, if you want to talk to some of these folks, these people are often advocates, and we're more than happy to jump on a phone. We have a lot that are probably in the state and local government industry, as I say. So that's it. I just want to make sure. Yeah. I don't know, I want to leave much time for questions, Nasser. I don't know if you.
Any questions of Harris or myself?
So yeah, thanks a lot. I just also want to introduce Jeff and Mike. These are our local reps here in Sacramento. So if you want to talk to them, they're certainly available to chat, or afterwards as well.
Yeah, thank you, Harris. Just very quickly, I formerly, before my Teranomic life, I was a state employee, much like yourselves. I was a project director over child welfare services at Social Services. I did the welfare project. I'm telling you, if mobility and VDI technology was around back then, we would have been an absolute hit in the context of saving, a lot of situations with neglected children, folks that are at risk. VDI would have gone a long ways in a way of giving us the proper access to the right applications and systems that were available back then on the mainframe. So there's a great deal of application. I can directly relate to it in the context of the world that you come from. And later on, when I became a deputy state CIO, we implemented some mobility policy in order to essentially enable that spectrum, but technology wasn't quite up to par. There weren't such solutions as Pure Storage or high-speed remote access technologies. Nowadays, we got the collection of the entire scenario to do a great job, and hopefully you guys will leverage that, all the technology solutions that are out there. There's a sign-in sheet going on. Please take a second and complete that so that we know who all attended. And as Harris said, if you guys have any questions at all, our website is teranomic.com, purestorage.com. A great deal of information that you guys can leverage and answer any questions. And of course, we're a local company and available to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out.